Christopher De Santiago with Sports Illustrated's MMA Knockout. Here today with a man who fought 17 times in the UFC. We're talking to the Boom, Brian Kelleher, a five-time bonus winner in the UFC. Brian, how's it going today?
I'm doing well, man. How's everything?
Pretty good, man. It's been a stellar career for you in the UFC. 17 fights, five performance bonuses, a lot of memorable moments in your career. It does suck to see that, UFC Roster Watch reported that you're no longer on the roster. For your fans at home watching, what can you tell me about this situation and how you found out?
Yeah, so getting an email actually was like how I first found out, which kind of sucked. And it was just scrolling through there. I saw like drug-free sport email me, and I'm like, man, hopefully I usually it's about like a drug test. So I'm like, usually it tells you you passed your test, but it said that I was removed from the drug testing pool, and I kind of put two and two together. But then, that was the first thing I heard. Then my manager had reached out the next morning and kind of told me the news. And I wasn't really shocked because I had known that, I was coming off a bunch of losses in a row. I had the neck surgery, and then I kind of had to try to bounce back from that. They gave me plenty of chances, so I'm thankful for that. I kind of wish I can go back and now that I reflect on my career and change a few things, but it's you can't really sit in your sorrows for too long, so you kind of got to just move on and figure it out.
Mhm. What are some of like the lessons that you learned from that last fight against Cody Gibson? And, what have you been doing in the time removed from that fight?
I was really getting back to my full self. It took a little while with the neck. It wasn't like the surgery went wrong or anything like that. Everything went amazing, and I got back in the gym pretty fast. It felt like it was too fast, but nothing was really bothering too much. It was more of a mental game of just getting used to using my neck full force and really being confident about like the grappling aspect of things and, taking guys down and shooting in as hard as possible on double legs and stuff like that took time. And but I was training really hard for that. That Cody Garbrandt fight was, such a huge opportunity for me, and I really felt great about going into that. And I really felt like destiny. I felt like something was on my side. After all that time and the layoff and the neck surgery and missing the Journey Newson fight, I was like, man, to be able to come back to fight Cody Garbrandt, like it's all gonna turn around for me. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna rewrite my whole story right here. And I had some success in that fight, but I got caught, and it was kind of devastating to have to deal with that. Then I went into the Cody Gibson fight with another feeling of like redemption type thing, where maybe I needed more time. The training started to get better for me, the wrestling, the grappling, and I went into that fight mentally prepared, and everything was fine, and physically everything was good. It's just, sometimes these guys are just better than you on the night, and that's what happens, and you kind of just have to face the music.
Mhm. And you fought the best guys, in the UFC. You fought the undefeated Umar. You fought a former champion Cody Garbrandt, Renan Brown. I mean, the list of name goes on. So I guess what's it like to have fought the best in the UFC for so many years and to really make a career and to build a fan base for yourself inside the UFC?
Yeah, like it's easy in this moment to kind of feel sad and upset about how things played out recently. But if I do reflect on my career in a more positive light, like, I'm blessed to have lived this dream and, to have fought for the UFC, which was, every fighter's dream growing up, trying to, win fights and chase this down and get to the pinnacle of the sport. And I was there, and I, always was a guy who took fights against the best guys, whoever they offered, short notice fights, short notice replacements. And I think, that the UFC really respected that. Um, you know, I'm proud of the fact that I was able to stay in the UFC for as long as I did and make some real memorable fights and put on some great performances and fight against take risks against guys that were big names or risky fights against up and comers that were younger guys trying to make a name off me as a veteran. I was always that guy willing to step up, so I'm proud of that. But I always look back and think I could have done better. Fighters don't just dream about being in the UFC, but they dream about being UFC champion. And, for me, like I truly believed that that was what I was going to be. And it's hard to kind of accept that I never got to that spot. But, you know, you have to kind of let that go and just be happy that you got to live this life.
For sure, man. It's good to see you, in good spirits. I hope that you're in good spirits, man. Looking back at your career, there's your career that really stand out to me. One being your debut against Yuri Alcantara. You get your coveted uh, guillotine submission. That I believe that's your favorite. And then another one that stands out to me is the near finish over Brow. What's the most memorable moment that you had in the UFC?
It really is hard to top the debut just because of all of that was behind that story. I had a long journey to get to the UFC, ups and downs, wins and losses, and that was like constantly happening throughout my career. I would win three and then lose one, and win two and then lose two, and I was never really that guy that was like, oh, that's the guy. Like he's undefeated or he's 8-1 and he's on a streak. And at that time I got a full-time job and I was still fighting, and I said to myself, listen, like if you want to make it, like you have to go on a big winning streak. Like you have to win like 5 or 6 fights and like really be impressive to get to the UFC, or else it's not going to happen. I was about 25, 26 years old at the time, or maybe even like 27, 28. And I just hit a mental switch, and I really went on a tear. I fought all the best guys in the region, see the regional scene, all these undefeated guys or guys with titles. Julio Arce, I fought him twice. He was one of those guys talked about to get into the UFC next. And I just said, you know what, I want to fight all these guys that are prospects that have all the hype behind them, so that if I beat them, I'll steal all that hype. And that's what I did. And then even after all that, it took another year for me to get that UFC debut in Brazil. And I took it on short notice. It was 2 weeks. I'll never forget, I was swimming at LA Fitness and I was kind of manifesting it. I felt like it was on the horizon. And my brother was not supposed to be training with me that day. He usually trains with me. And I see him walking in the pool area and I'm like, well, this is weird. I'm like, he told me he was busy. And he's like, you got to get out. You got to call your manager. And I'm like, what's going on? And, I felt my heart like racing. And he's just like smiling at me, telling me, like, call your manager right now. He's like, I think you're in. And I'm like, no way. And that's when I found out I'm going to Brazil to fight, top 15 guy, Yuri Alcantara. And it was just amazing, like at that moment, long flights were like something that was like brought me anxiety, and it was a tough time just getting on planes. And I actually got off my first flight, like, and almost ruined my whole dream based off of just anxiety to fly. And then I figured that all out. I got on, I got to Brazil. My dad was there. It was just this whole crazy story. And then, for it to pan out the way that it did, guillotine finish in the first round, get the bonus, hostile territory in Brazil with that energy. It was just amazing. So I would say that's probably the best, most fulfilling moment. And then after that would probably be the Barao fight, just based off of his career and running the UFC as a champion would be the next best.
Yeah, I mean the Brow fight, man. I mean, I remember round three, you were giving him everything, and he stood there and it took it. So I mean, yeah, props to him, props to you on that performance, man. Um, Back in 2018, you were calling for a fight with Sean O'Malley. Is that the one fight that got away from you in the UFC?
Yeah, I mean, especially if you look at how things played out, obviously he's gotten better and better each fight. And, of course they have an agenda and they push certain guys that have star power. And he's one of those guys. But then he did prove himself, when he fought Peter Yan, and then he knocked out Aljo. And that was kind of surprising to everybody. And, he really started to become more and more devastating as he went on, and harder to take down than people thought. Uh, but yeah, I just felt like at the time that I was calling for that fight, it was very reasonable. I've always been a reasonable guy. I'm not trying to call for like the champion when I'm on a 2-fight losing streak. But like at that time, I had knocked out one of his ex teammates, Hunter Azure, and I thought, man, like this is a good time for me to try to slip in and get that big fight against somebody who's up and coming, who they want to kind of use a veteran to build, his career. So I said, maybe they'll give me that fight because they're going to think I'm a winnable fight for him, you know? So I was like, let's do it. Like, this is a way for me to kind of build myself back. So I had actually gotten really close to getting that fight. Even Tim Welsh's coach, we had a DM session, and he was telling me that I was one of the names that they had proposed to fight next,
Mhm.
and that the UFC had said no. And that kind of pissed me off. And I was like, fuck, man, like if the UFC was just behind that, I probably would have got that fight.
A little trivia for you. Can you remember the nickname that you kind of gave yourself in that time in 2018? Can you remember the nickname? Do you see yourself calling out Sean O'Malley in the post-fight interview?
Oh yeah, I think for me, if I can get another big victory over a contender series guy, that just I'm the contender series killer. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
that he's the only one left.
Something with about so, some kind of I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think.
It's been
It's
a
like
long time.
something about killing off like the young guys, but I forget the name of it.
Yeah, so I wrote an article back then. It was you said that you were the contender series killer.
Yes, yes. I knew there was killer in there, and I knew it was like killing off younger, guys coming up. And that was kind of my goal after a while in my career of kind of facing ups and downs. So I figured like beating these young guys is a way for you to prove to yourself that you still belong, you know? So that was kind of the motivation that I had behind that.
Awesome, man. And I guess, moving on with your career, like, do you still plan to keep on fighting? Do you plan to get into the rap business? What's the next steps for you and your career?
I'm kind of at a crossroads now. I don't really like to think about age as too much. I really would like to focus on just like how I feel and how I'm performing in the gym and stuff like that. But it's just like I don't know what it is, man. Because like with fighting, it's crazy. Like your mindset can feel like it's on point and everything can feel like it's going great, and then you can get finished in the first round, and just be completely confused and like, man, I don't know what it is. Do I not belong here? Am I not the same guy? And you start to question everything. But then you go into a fight. I've had fights where I didn't even want to be there. I was so mentally drained. And I would go in and I would finish that fight and win that fight in the first round. Just nothing makes sense. So it's like such a mind game, and sometimes luck, and sometimes just timing and stylistic matchups and who you fight and all that. And at this point in my life, like I don't really know anything else besides fighting. And so being a regular person, working like a 9 to 5 is like the scariest thing to me, and kind of hard to like just adjust to and be like, oh, I'm just gonna get a job now and be normal and like, live that life. I just can't see myself doing it. And I've never really been like a coach. I feel like I would do well at it, but I've never really took it on as like while I'm fighting in my career, I've been 100% all in, and I never took the time to like share my time with coaching because I was always training twice a day, 3 times a day, and recovery and all this, and it's hard to figure out like what's next. To be honest with you, and it leads me to think I want to continue fighting because that's all I know, but I'm also honest with myself and like you can't do this forever, and it's like as I get older, I think about my health, I think about my future more and more, and you wonder like, should I just take this as a sign like it's over, or should I try to keep getting paydays from another promotion, PFL, bare knuckle, like I don't know which route I want to go or what's the best, but if I can get in the PFL tournament somehow and try to win the $1 million, like that would be life changing and that would be worth it to me to continue to go through this. But other than that, it's like just to take one-off fights and get paid like half of what I was making in the UFC is kind of like, do I want to do that anymore?
Hmm. And it's unfortunate that the PFL doesn't have a bantamweight division. And but I
Yeah.
believe you have fought at featherweight before against Cody Stamen, I believe, right?
Yeah, a lot of my featherweight fights, I did fight at featherweight a bunch of times on the regional scene, and those fights were against a lot of actual featherweights. But I always realized it wasn't ever a strength thing, but it was like a size and reach and stuff like that kind of thing where like, it's kind of hard to deal with those guys. They outweigh you. They're 6 feet tall. I'm a shorter, stockier build. you know, in the UFC, I fought a lot of featherweight fights against actual bantamweights that agreed to meet me there, which was a blessing because that's like a natural fight. You know, we're not cutting as much weight, we're healthier, we're able to perform better. And honestly, like that Cody Statement performance is one of my best fights. Like that's one of my
Mm-hmm.
better performances, even though I lost by decision. You know, he was a top level guy, and I really hung with him. You know, I competed really well with him. It wasn't like I got dominated in that fight. And so it makes me think I could fight at 45, but man, in the PFL, I don't know how this drug testing works. I don't know what these guys are on or what's going on, you know, and I'm not like the biggest bantamweight. I'm a heavy guy. Like I'm probably 160 to 165 right now, but that's not that big for featherweight, you know, and I'm only 5'6" and I have short reach. So I feel like bantamweight is where I should be, but I'm hoping PFL would open up that division.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think Bellator could be a potential door as well, but I'm not sure how many fighters they're taking on with the merger and everything. I guess another route, yeah, this is one of my final questions. Another route for you, I feel like you've been kind of teasing at is Conor McGregor. He has Greenback Records now. His new record label. Is that something that you might entertain later down the line?
Well, you know what, man? Since he's partnered up with Bare Knuckle, I feel like that company is just completely exploding, taking off, and it's only going to get bigger and bigger with him backing it. And it's like with him, with his level of star power and his, you know, the things that he creates, you know, this record label and stuff. I just feel like if you can go in there and Bare Knuckle and like really be impressive in front of him and market yourself and do the right things and make the right call outs, like things can move fast for you. And that's like at this age, I like to kind of plan for a quick attack. You know, I'm not trying to like, you know, fight fucking 10 fights and then figure out what's next. Like I'm trying to like maybe fight one or two fights and make a big explosion wherever it is that I am. So like I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to attack it. And I feel like if I could win a bare knuckle fight and like spit some bars on the mic or something and like show my skills there, like maybe he likes that and he takes me under his wing or something with the record company and make some music. That would be cool, you know. Hopefully, I can make that happen, but we'll see what happens. You know, bare knuckle's scary with the the cuts and everything, but it does interest me and it is different than MMA, so it might be something I look into.
Awesome. Are you expecting any money from the UFC antitrust lawsuit? Because I believe you're eligible for the money because you did fight in June 2017.
Yeah, funny enough, I just realized that yesterday. I was thinking about that because the court just settled on that amount. Obviously there is a lot of details to it. It's kind of complex, and you have to kind of like figure out how to get your money. But I spoke to my manager, and he's kind of been in touch with that. And he'll be able to figure out what I get and whatever. But there's like a percentage of your purse, and then if you got a bonus, you get extra on top of that. I do think I'm eligible for something, which really helps at this point because financially, just having lost my last couple of fights and everything, and then like not getting bonuses and paying taxes and paying fees and all these different things. It's like I could definitely use it. It would help me a lot. But I'm waiting to hear back to see like what things happen from that. I believe I lucked out and like just made the cut somehow. I only have one fight though within that whole thing. So like the more fights you have, the more money you're gonna get. And so that kind of sucks. But I know that the Cajun Johnson case, I believe, is still going on, and I think that's for more recent fighters, which would
Mhm.
include me. So we'll see what happens with that.
What do you want the fans to remember about the legacy that you left in the UFC? Whether it's the guillotines that you got your opponents with to the fight of the nights, what do you want the fans to remember about your legacy?
Uh, that's a tough one. I feel like I was always authentic. You know, I was always my real self. I didn't really go far off into like being crazy or doing any antics that wasn't me, my personality. So keeping it real is one thing, and also just being willing to like step up and fight the dangerous fights and take the risks and take the short notice opportunities and put on exciting fights for the fans. I know the most positive thing that I hear from fans is like that I was always exciting to watch in there, win or lose. So that means a lot to me, and yeah, I appreciate all the love and all the support, and just anybody who followed my career, really.
Awesome. Well, Brian, it's been a pleasure to cover your career inside the UFC, and I plan to do it outside of the UFC as well, man. Thanks so much for the time.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.